Hi, I'm Jane, and this cute guy's name is Willie. My parents were talented oceanographers, and we lived by the ocean. That's why I'd loved swimming with dolphins ever since I was a kid. However, this story began before I was even born. Let me start from the beginning, and don't forget to press like. My parents had 3 daughters. My older sister, Holly, was born first. Mom and Dad adored her. She was their whole world until Grace was born. After that, she became their favorite, and Holly no longer got as much of their attention. Of course, she didn't like that. Holly's relationship with our parents got worse. A couple of years after that, I was born and quickly became the favorite child simply because I was the youngest. Obviously, that annoyed my older sisters.
Who has the pinkest cheeks? Who is our treasure? It's you, Jane.
A treasure in smelly diapers. Holly constantly fought with our parents and despised Grace and me. Over the years, things only got worse. Mom and Dad often went on business trips and asked Holly to look after us, but she just snorted and rolled her eyes. Am I just a free babysitter for you? I hate this house. I can't wait to move out. When Holly turned 18, her dream came true. She packed up and moved to the city. We didn't hear from her for several years. She refused to keep in touch with anyone from our family. Well, whatever. I didn't miss her. At least no one at home was shouting anymore. I turned 15 and Grace 17. I was enjoying my life. When I had free time, I would swim with dolphins and bask in the sun. Mom and Dad were my best friends and always inspired me. I was going to follow in their footsteps and become an oceanographer. Sometimes, they even brought me along on their expeditions. Grace and I fought like cats and dogs. I guess she was jealous of my special bond with our parents. After all, her relationship with Mom and Dad wasn't as great as it used to be. They did not like Grace's friends, and they fought because of that all the time.
They will get you into trouble. I forbid you from talking to them.
They are human rights activists. They fight against ocean pollution.
Yeah, right. They throw parties on the beach and leave a ton of garbage there. Don't argue with us and go to your room.
You never tell Jane what to do. Things went on that way. What happened next divided my life into before and after. One morning, our parents were leaving on a small trip when Grace came up to them and said she wanted to go with her friends to a party on a remote island.
No way. It's too dangerous. There is no connection on that island. If something happened to you, you wouldn't even be able to call for help.
My sister got mad and ran out of the house. Mom and Dad searched for her for a long time, but eventually they had to leave. I had a bad feeling and asked to come with them.
Jane, you should stay at home and wait for your sister here. We'll be back in a couple of days.
They hugged me and left. An hour later, Grace came home. Where the hell have you been? Mom and Dad were worried out of their minds. Leave me alone. It's none of your business. We had a huge fight and didn't talk for several days. Soon, Officer Adams knocked on our door. He was a policeman and a friend of our family.
Girls, sit down. I have bad news for you.
He said that during the expedition, our parents went missing. There was little chance of finding them, but they were doing everything they could. Oh God, my blood ran cold. I wish it was just a nightmare. Unfortunately, it was all real. Then, the policeman asked us about the day we saw our parents for the last time. I told him the truth. However, Grace was very nervous and seemed to be hiding something. Almost a week went by, but our parents were nowhere to be found. Grace and I didn't know what to do. We were afraid that we would have to go to an orphanage before our parents came back. But then one day, Holly suddenly came over. She had apparently got a visit from a policeman as well. We hadn't seen her in years. Girls, I know that you must be in shock, but now I'm here to take care of you. She said that she had taken custody of us, and we had to do everything she said. I wasn't thrilled. After all, Holly was the worst big sister in the world. As a kid, she used to fight with everyone and took her anger out on us. However, it was better than going to an orphanage. Besides, I believed with my whole heart that our parents would be found soon, and we wouldn't have to put up with Holly for long. She immediately started to boss us around. For some reason, she picked on me the most. She followed me like some kind of warden and forbade me from everything. Wait, where are you going? Swimming with Willie? Who is Willie? My friend. He's a dolphin. If you were at home more often, you would know that I'm going to become an oceanographer. You can forget about your stupid dream. I forbid you from swimming in the ocean. You wouldn't dare. If you keep arguing with me, I will tie you to myself and you will always be supervised. Ugh, I was so sick of that psycho. I even had a dream that Holly had braided our hair together so that Grace and I would always be on a leash. I missed my parents terribly. I waited every day for them to come back. I dusted their room and took care of Mom's flowers. But for some reason, Holly seemed to be on edge whenever she saw that. Mom, Dad, where are you? I miss you. Are you here again? Go do something useful. Quit ordering me around. I hope our parents will come back soon and you will disappear from our lives. Everything Holly did annoyed me. I'd lost my temper if she used Mom's perfume or sat in Dad's chair at the head of the table. My sister seemed to be trying to take their place. When I found out that she took our parents' clothes out of the closets and put them in the attic, I went ballistic. I ran into the kitchen and started yelling at her. This isn't your home! I wish you hadn't come here at all! That's it! I'm tired of you, you little brat! Go to your room! You're getting no dinner tonight! Living with that wacko was getting harder by the day. I was at the end of my rope. But then, things got worse. At some point, Holly started selling off our stuff. Dad's car, Mom's jewelry. That's when I realized my sister wasn't there for Grace and me, but for our parents' money. That lying con artist. I tried to figure out how to expose her lies. I didn't know who to go to for help. After all, Grace was always hanging out with her friends and acting like the problems at home did not concern her. I was on my own. The first thing I decided to do was rummage through Holly's things to find out more about her insidious plans. However, before I could do that, Holly walked into the room. She was chatting with someone on the phone. I quickly hid in the closet. Okay, let's hear what the Queen of Lies was hiding. I've already sold everything I can, but I still don't have enough money. Do we really have to sell the house as well? I knew all she cared about was money. I swear, there was smoke coming out of my ears. I barely held back from attacking Holly. I told myself to take a deep breath. Of course, sooner or later, I'll tell my sisters about everything. But they don't need to know anything yet. With those words, she left the room and I got out of my hiding place. We couldn't let her sell our house, but I couldn't stop her by myself. So I asked Grace for help. I told her everything. However, it was like she didn't even care. Do whatever you want. I'm going to a party with my friends tonight. What's wrong with you? Our parents are missing. Holly is going to sell our house, but all you think about is partying. Oh, give me a break. What, are you upset Mom and Dad aren't here to praise you for everything? My sisters had always been jealous of my friendship with our parents. That's probably why they were acting like spoiled witches. I would show them I had grown up and could stand up for myself. As soon as Grace left the room, I spilled syrup on the dress she was going to wear to the party. Take that! My sister would have to stay at home and help me deal with Holly. And then I heard voices in the hallway. I looked out and saw that Holly was showing the house to potential buyers. Wow, she wasted no time. I wasn't about to just stand by. I ran into the living room, tore off the wallpaper, and poured water from the vase onto the floor. When the buyers and my sister walked into the room, I innocently pointed at the puddle and said that the ceiling was leaking. It's so damp here, the wallpaper's peeling off. See? Ha ha! The visitors ran away like they were trying to win a marathon. Holly's eyes turned red with anger. You're going to pay for this. Before I could open my mouth, Grace came running to the living room. She was shaking her ruined dress in the air and screaming like a madwoman. I know it's your doing, Jane. Are you nuts? They started shouting at me together. What are you gonna do, huh? Tie me up so that I don't interfere with your plans? You're both so selfish. Having said that, I ran to my room. I felt like I was all alone in the whole world. That evening, I wanted to wipe the dust in my parents' room as usual when I found Grace sobbing in their bed. Are you okay? My sister said she was trying her best to act strong, but she missed our parents like crazy. I hang out with my friends because otherwise I just cry all day long. Jane, I need to tell you something. I think it's my fault our parents are missing. She told me that the day our parents went missing, she'd fought with them because they wouldn't let her go to a party on an island. She hid in our backyard and texted them she was going anyway. What if Mom and Dad went looking for me? I should have told you about it earlier, but I was so ashamed and scared. Wow, no wonder it seemed like my sister was hiding something. That changed everything. Could our parents be waiting for rescue on the island? The police were looking for them in the wrong place then. I called Officer Adams and told him about our suspicions. However, his reaction surprised me. Jane, you should talk to Holly. Ha! Right. That liar didn't care if our parents came back or not. I decided that I would save them by myself. I asked Grace to distract Holly and ran to the pier. The weather was terrible and the waves were as high as houses because of the strong wind. However, nothing could stop me. I jumped into a boat on the beach and sailed toward the island. Mom, Dad, I'm coming. However, at some point, a giant wave overturned the boat and I ended up in the water. I didn't know which way to swim and started panicking. But what happened now? Then I felt someone grab my arm and pull me somewhere. It was Holly. She dragged me onto the boat and started to scold me while I coughed. Are you a complete moron? Why would you get on a boat with such weather? I told you to stay away from the ocean because I was afraid you would end up like our parents. While she was screaming, we swam back to the pier. Grace was already waiting for us there. I'm sorry, Jane. I told Holly where you went and she ran here to save you. I wasn't angry though. All I could think of was that we should get to the island. We need to save Dad and Mom! Come on, we'll get there by boat in no time! Girls, listen. Our parents never went to that island. Their bodies were already found. Unfortunately, they died during the expedition. What? No! No! Holly was lying! It couldn't be true! Officer Adams told me to tell you the truth. But, Jane, you were looking forward to our parents' return so much, I couldn't bear to break your heart. It turned out Holly had been talking to the policeman when I overheard her conversation. I still couldn't quite believe it. Why did you sell all their stuff then? Mom and Dad had a lot of debt because they invested in the construction of a dolphinarium. I tried to deal with it. I'm sorry I was so overbearing. I was just really worried about you. Maybe I'm not a perfect big sister, but I gave up everything and came back home to be with you in this difficult time. I didn't know what to say. Tears streamed down my face. My sisters burst into tears after me. We lost our parents and felt lost. However, that tragedy brought us together. What matters is we have each other. Together, we can overcome anything. Holly, Grace, and I hugged for a long time. I knew things would be fine. Sooner or later, the rain would stop and the sun would come out from behind the clouds again. After that, we became friends. However, we had to put our house up for sale to pay off our parents' debt. One day, Holly went to a store when a gorgeous limo drove up to our house, and a handsome guy holding a huge bouquet got out of it. He introduced himself as Stuart, and he said he was looking for Holly. She'll be back soon. Are you her friend? I'm her fiancé. Ex-fiancé. I proposed to your sister and told her she wouldn't need for anything because I'm very rich. But Holly found out that your parents were missing and said she would only marry me if I agreed to raise you with her. I was against it, so Holly left me and came here to take care of you. I soon realized what a jerk I was. Wow, I called Holly selfish, but she sacrificed everything for Grace and me. At that moment, my sister returned home. She lost her temper when she saw her ex-fiancé. What are you doing here? Holly, let's start over. Marry me, and let's raise your sisters together. Holly didn't want to forgive Stuart, but Grace and I convinced her that he was genuinely sorry, so she agreed to give him a second chance. Soon, they got married. Stuart made sure the dolphinarium was built and helped us pay off all our debts. We are going to continue in our parents' footsteps. I have a place where I can swim with Willie now. Grace, Holly, and I have been through a lot. We haven't always had a perfect relationship, but what matters is that now we have become a real family. I'm sure our parents would be proud of us. What do you think? Write your opinion in the comments down below, and don't forget to hit that like button.
Can you imagine what it's like to live out your best romantic dream ever? That fantasy you're so obsessed with that it could only be found in your imagination? Well, that's what I had, in real life. I fell in love with Steve when we were in high school. We were so in love with each other that we swore never to love anyone else, ever. He was handsome, respectful, sweet, and he took me out on the most thoughtful and romantic dates. He was every girl's dream boyfriend, and sometimes the other girls would try to steal him from me, but they'd never succeed. He only had eyes for me, and I only had eyes for him. Hey, there's something I'd like you to do before this story takes a wild and awful turn. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell while you're at it too. Thanks. Now I'll continue. We went to the same college for 4 years, and when we were finished, he took me on a vacation to a little island in the South Pacific and proposed to me there. Everything was falling into place for me. At just the right time. When we got back home, we announced our engagement and the wedding plans began pretty quickly. We didn't have to deal with a lot of the stress that couples face when planning to get married. Steve's parents were really rich, so they bought us a really nice house. They also deposited some money into our accounts because they knew it would take us a while to find good jobs since we were just out of college. I'm sure you want to hear about my wedding, right? We had the most luxurious wedding ever. The venue was almost like a palace and everything looked so shiny and expensive. Our wedding cake was the size of a small house, I swear. I can't keep stressing enough on how perfect everything was. Until we spent 1 year together without trying to have kids, but after a while, Steve thought we should try.
I just think that you and me combined would make the most adorable baby ever.
He kept saying. Now I know that it's usually the woman who wants a kid more than a man, but it was the other way around here. I still wanted to have more time to myself. Plus, being pregnant is not fun. But I gave in anyway, and before I knew it, my tummy was growing and growing. And growing and growing. At 6 months, I was way too big.
Whoa, Bessie, you're getting huge. I think there's more than one kid in there. Unless you're giving birth to an elephant, I think we should get you checked out.
Steve said. I hadn't taken an ultrasound yet because I'm sort of traditional, and I didn't want to know the baby's gender, but Steve was right. I was too big. I needed to find out why.
You were right.
The doctor said to my husband.
About what? There's more than one baby in there. Twins? Yay! Wrong. What?
We both gasped.
You're having triplets, and they're all girls. Congratulations.
I had mixed feelings. On one hand, I always wanted baby girls. On the other hand, 3 babies at once would be so much work. I'd probably have to give up my career to stay home with them. But I tried not to think too much. Everything had gone so perfectly well in my life up to then, so why would things change now? Steve was over the moon. It was like Christmas every day. He spoiled me even more and bought me all the things I craved and more. Then he started buying loads of cute baby clothes and toys. We prepared a big nursery for the babies, and it was almost like a fully stocked baby shop. Then on a calm summer evening, they came. It was an easy delivery at the hospital. It's like they just popped right out. Don't get me wrong, it was still painful as hell. But after seeing my babies' faces, all that pain melted right away. We named them Monica, Phoebe, and Robin. They were gorgeous, and I saw them as perfect little angels until about 2 weeks later when they became extremely annoying. They'd cry and cry all the time, and nothing I did would make them stop. But then, whenever Steve came around, they'd stop and smile.
How come they only cry around you?
He asked one night. I was convinced that these babies were playing with our heads, but hey, they're babies, and were they really capable of that? It wasn't until they were 3 years old that I was fully convinced there was something seriously wrong with my babies. A few days before, Steve had brought a kitten home. He thought it would be good for the girls to have a pet. We named him Mr. Fluffers. And at first the girls seemed to love him, when their father was around, that is. A few days after we'd gotten the cat, I was upstairs having a shower. Steve had gone to the supermarket to buy some milk, so I left the girls alone playing in the living room. I got out of the shower, and while I was getting dressed, I heard them laughing really loudly. I went to see what they were doing, thinking that it was probably something cute. But do you know what I saw? They were trying to drown the kitten in the kitchen sink. "Stop that at once!" I screamed at them while saving the kitten. I was so angry that I put everyone in the car and made them watch me bring Mr. Fluffers to a shelter. And do you know what? They didn't even care. When we got back home, Steve looked confused.
Where's Mr. Fluffers? I've been looking everywhere for him.
Mommy took him away.
Robin said.
Why?
Mommy is so mean.
And they all started crying.
Why did you do that, Bessie? I don't understand.
Your girls are monsters. They were trying to drown him in the kitchen sink.
Mommy liar. We love Mr. Fluffers.
Monica said, and the other two echoed. I was like, huh? That's not all they did. There were times they deliberately break things and leave them on the floor. One time I nearly walked all over some broken glasses, and they were looking just to make sure I stepped on it. Then I noticed that I started having weird stomach cramps. I went to my doctor and he couldn't understand what was wrong. I didn't have a stomach flu or anything like that. Weeks later, I caught Robin putting cleaning supplies in my kombucha, my favorite drink, which I have every single day. You monster! Why are you doing that? I screamed at her and locked the triplets in their room. When Steve got home, he was upset with me. He believed them over me and refused to believe that they could be this evil. How could I lock his perfect little girls away? Ugh. This was really starting to take a toll on my perfect marriage. Often, I'd sit and think about how wonderful it had been before the children came along. So I tried to find a solution. I decided I probably needed to get them in school. I'd been staying at home with them since they were born, and maybe they just needed to meet other children to learn how children were supposed to behave. I enrolled them in a lovely preschool that same week and shipped them off the next. Hopefully, they'd show their true colors at school, and Steve would understand that I was the victim in this situation. The first day they left for school, I felt so free and happy. Well, my plan didn't work very well. I thought that their teachers could help to convince Steve that they were bad and I was the innocent one. But after a few months, we received nothing but good reports from their teachers.
Perfect behavior.
Perfect grades.
Model children. We love them.
Like what? Were we talking about the same kids here? This was confusing. And Steve looked at me with an expression that said,
Well, you are crazy, like I always suspected. Our girls are angels.
It just kept getting worse. Because the girls were at school now, I had more time to spend on my career. I found a job at an architectural firm, and they told me I'd be able to work from home for the first year. I set up a little home office and felt happy that I was finally getting my life together. But of course, the triplets had to ruin that too. I had been working on a major project which would determine whether or not I'd be promoted. I spent sleepless nights on it, and I was almost finished. It was a Sunday, and I had to submit it on Monday. I decided to spend the day being a good mother and wife instead of working. I cooked a wonderful meal and made popcorn so the girls could watch a movie with their dad. Steve got a call from work and had to step out for a little while, so I went to the kitchen to wash the dishes. Then, I smelled smoke, and the smoke detectors went off. What could it be? I was so nervous. I followed the smoke until it led to my office. The 3 girls were standing over my project, which was engulfed in flames. Phoebe was holding a box of matches and smiling.
Pretty fire, huh?
Monica said. You evil monsters! I screamed. I ran to get the fire extinguisher, and I was able to put out the fire myself. My project was ruined. The biggest project of my career. Steve came running in soon after.
What happened here, honey?
Mommy made a fire.
You liars! Don't tell me you believe them, Steve.
Hey, don't speak to them so harshly. Why'd you set fire to your own stuff, honey? That's really weird. I think you need counseling.
I couldn't believe he was siding with them again. I marched out of the room and went to stay in a hotel that night. I was sick of all of them. After a night away from them, I was feeling recharged and ready to try harder as a mom. I began to ask myself many questions. Like, did they behave this way because of me? Was it all my fault? Maybe I just needed to make a better effort to be nice to them. So I went back home with presents for everyone. I let them skip school that day, and I took them to the mall. I bought them ice cream and everything else they asked for. And after that, things got a bit better. I guess they figured it was better to have me as a friend than an enemy. But that didn't last for a very long time. Years later, when the girls were teenagers, I got pregnant again. I was overjoyed. Would I have a normal baby this time? I hoped I would. After a few months, I found out I was having a boy. I became plump, rosy, and very happy. Soon the triplets would leave home for college, and I'd get to focus on trying to be a wonderful mom to a sweet boy. This could be my chance to start over. The girls sensed that I was too happy, and this is when they started behaving horribly again. They'd deliberately leave the house in a mess and spill things in odd places, almost like they wanted me to trip, fall, and hurt myself. I'd always clean everything up without being angry, so I guess they thought they needed to try harder because one morning as I was walking down the stairs to get some breakfast from the kitchen, I felt a rough push and went tumbling down the stairs. I woke up in a hospital bed surrounded by Steve and the girls. Someone pushed me, I said.
No, honey. Phoebe said you threw yourself down the stairs on purpose. The girls tried to catch you, but it was too late.
That's a lie.
No, it isn't, Mom.
You're very lucky, Bessie. You nearly lost the baby.
A middle-aged doctor said as he entered the room. Then I realized that this was probably part of the girls' horrible plan. They wanted me to lose my baby. What was I going to do? When I was well enough to leave the hospital, I went home for a while and decided I needed to leave unnoticed. I snuck out after midnight and took a train to town, which was about an hour away. I found a hotel and stayed there until the night I was ready to give birth. Everything was running smoothly at the hospital until the doctor decided that I needed to have a C-section. They put me to sleep for the operation, and when I woke up, everything was hazy. "Where's my baby?"
She's right over there.
the nurse said while pointing to the crib next to me. I looked inside. It was empty. "There's no baby there," I said. She looked shocked, then left the room. Then I saw a group of nurses and doctors outside of my room, and they all looked alarmed. "What's going on? What happened to my baby?" No one spoke to me, and then I saw the police arrive.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, but it appears that your baby has been kidnapped. We really have no idea how this happened. We will show you the camera footage, and I hope that you'll be able to identify this person.
One of the cops said. They took me to a little security room, and that was when I saw it. One of the triplets had my baby boy in a blanket, and she ran through the hospital and hopped into a cab. I called Steve immediately so he could see for himself that his girls were evil. I don't know how they knew where I was, or even that I was ready to give birth, but they found me and took my baby. Right now, I am devastated, just hoping I will get to see him someday. All 3 girls ran off, and we haven't heard from them since then. At least Steve believes me now, but I will never forgive him for not trusting me in the past.
I remember it like it was just yesterday.
I can't believe it, bro. It's finally happened. I'm finally a signed musical artist.
Josiah said to me excitedly as soon as we entered the car on the way home after signing his contract. I was so happy for him because I'd seen how hard and tirelessly he'd worked to achieve this. 4 years later, and he was now a well-known and extremely famous musician. One windy day, on our way to the venue of one of his shows on the tour bus, I overheard him in a conversation on the phone with someone, presumably his manager. He sounded extremely tired, which was expected because he had performed 2 back-to-back shows for 2 nights in a row, and he had to perform one more this night.
I'm getting really tired, Ernie.
I overheard him say.
How many more of these do I have to do? I don't think I can go through with this.
He was on the phone for about 3 more minutes before he finally hung up, and before I could even ask, he sat beside me, and he said to me,
James, this is becoming harder and harder the more I go on. I don't know how much more touring and moving from place to place I can handle. I'm beginning to feel burnt out.
I understand what you mean, Josiah. I know it's not easy, but you gotta do what you gotta do. That's how showbiz works. How many more of these shows do you have to do before the tour's over?
3, but it feels like an eternity. I can't wait to get home and just relax. I know I wanted to be famous, but I'm beginning to have second thoughts about it. I mean, my life isn't even my own. I thought I would have more control over my life, not less of it. But I guess you're right. I just have to keep on doing whatever they want me to do.
How about we celebrate this night after the show? I offered. You need something to take your mind off this and blow off some steam.
All right, bro.
8 hours later, and we were cruising around town in his car. We had just been to a nightclub, and Josiah was feeling much better. Josiah kept one hand on the wheel as he turned to me and asked,
You never did learn how to drive, did you?
Nope, I replied.
Well, there's a first time for everything. You gotta learn one day, don't you?
Josiah said to me as he left the car engine running, stepped out of the car, and walked over to the front passenger seat. He opened the door and we switched seats. I could feel my hands shaking as the car moved along. I took a peek at the speedometer and I was moving at a measly 10 miles per hour. Josiah encouraged me to go faster, and I did. But it didn't take long before the car collided with a parked truck. The entire windows were smashed, but miraculously I wasn't hurt. I checked myself for any damage and there was none, save for some bruises and scratches. Josiah, though, had received some serious injuries and was hospitalized, where he was told that the accident damaged his vocal cords irreparably and that he would never be able to sing again. Josiah asked the doctors not to tell anyone else about this. Soon after, a record label executive came to check on Josiah.
How are you holding up, buddy?
Mr. Camp asked.
Well, I'm getting better. I'll soon be able to get on my feet and make some hit songs in no time. Well, focus on your recovery for now. We wouldn't want anything to happen to your voice now, would we? Nothing to worry about, Mr. Camp. The damage is only temporary.
Josiah and Mr. Camp discussed for a few more minutes before he left. 3 months later, Josiah was back in the studio recording new songs. He tried his utmost best, but it was very obvious to all those present in the studio. He had lost his sweet, silky singing voice, and he was never going to get it back. By now, rumors about his accident and its implications had leaked, and everyone was concerned. Would this affect Josiah's voice? Could this mean the end of his short career as a well-known musician? And so, I thought of a plan.
Are you crazy? How did you think that would work?
Josiah yelled as I told him of my plan. Well, think about it for a second. We have the same height, build, and even the same skin tone. Making me look like you would not be so hard to do. It's like everything's perfectly aligned, I replied, excited.
And what about the most important thing? My voice? Are you going to undergo surgery for that too?
Josiah replied, pacing back and forth angrily. Well, we do sound alike. I know I'm not as good a singer as you, but I'm a quick learner, and in a short while, with the right coach, the way I sing would be indistinguishable from yours. Can't you see that I'm trying to help you here?
Really? You call that helping? You want to become me? Can't you see how that's crazy? There can only be one Josiah.
I'm sorry, I thought I was trying to help. Josiah's album finally dropped, and it was a stinker. There were bad reviews everywhere. I looked up the top 200 music charts, and not a single Josiah song was on there. His album of 18 songs couldn't manage a single song in the top 200 songs in the country at the moment. And to make things worse, there was a new up-and-coming singer who was garnering media attention. It was even rumored that Josiah's record label had offered him a record deal with the aim of getting rid of Josiah. The final straw was when Josiah could no longer afford to make payments on his enormous mansion and had to move out to a much smaller condo.
All right, you win.
Josiah said to me on the phone one early morning.
Let's go with your crazy idea.
Thank goodness he finally agreed. Good morning, Dr. Kim, I said to the doctor as I sat in his office. Josiah was already present, waiting for me. The doctor informed me of the procedure I was to undergo and how long I would take to recuperate. I didn't really listen to anything he said. I just wanted the procedure to be done so we could move on.
I must say, James, this is the first time I've done something like this.
Well, doctor, there's a first time for everything.
None of my patients have ever asked me to make them look exactly like someone else, because it's really hard to do so, but lucky for you, I'm the best in the business.
Well, that's why we came to you, Dr. Kim, I replied, smiling. We talked a bit more, and then we decided on a date for the surgery. The days flew by, and before long, the appointed day had arrived and the surgery was performed. A month later, I was in Dr. Kim's office again for a post-surgery checkup. Josiah was running late, and he came in 20 minutes later, sweating.
Sorry I'm late.
Then he looked at me.
I'm still getting used to the fact that you look exactly like me, especially as I'm not a twin. It's freaky.
Well, James, it seems everything is in order. I'm impressed at how alike you two are now. Almost indistinguishable, like two identical twins.
Dr. Kim said as he stared at me and Josiah. It's all thanks to you, doctor. You really outdid yourself.
Well, I guess I did.
Over the next few weeks, I began to learn everything I could about Josiah, from Josiah. My singing voice was the same as his. I'd become a much better singer than him, and some months later, I released an album. It soon began to climb the music charts, and before long, it was multi-platinum as well, even doing much better than Josiah's previous albums. A few months later, I got a call from Mr. Camp. We discussed how well my album was doing and started to make plans for a world tour. Then, just before he hung up the phone, he said something to me that made my blood turn cold.
Oh, and just so you know, I already know that you're not the real Josiah. I know all about what really happened. But not to worry, your secret is safe with me. You're raking in the big bucks for our record label, so just continue to do that and we're good.
I struggled to reply as I stammered, But how did you know? Who told you?
That's not important.
Mr. Camp replied, and he hung up the phone. It was the night of one of my concerts, and here I was performing for over 10,000 people who had gathered in the stadium, when I suddenly began to feel dizzy. And before I could stop myself, I collapsed to the floor in a heap and blacked out. I awoke in a hospital bed and was informed that the cause of my fainting was severe dehydration and exhaustion. I would need to take a break from performing, and so my remaining shows were postponed until I got better. The next day, I was in my enormous mansion when I suddenly began to feel something slimy drip down my face. I thought nothing of it and wiped it off. But when it continued for several days, I decided to pay a visit to Dr. Kim. But imagine my surprise when I got to the address of his building and found it entirely empty, as if he had never been there. It didn't take me long, though, to find out why he did that. I watched the nightly news in horror as they declared Dr. Kim wanted by the police for unethical medical practices. They even stated that he had been operating without a license for over a decade. I immediately booked an appointment with another experienced plastic surgeon, and after tests were concluded, he informed me that I was still lucky to be alive and have a face, as my face would have started to break down and fall off piece by piece if I didn't come in when I did. I sat there shocked to my bones as the doctor explained all this to me. We scheduled another surgery to correct what was done to my face, but after it, my face became severely scarred. While I was still recovering, Mr. Camp dropped by the hospital to pay me a visit.
Well, I don't know how to say this, but
He began. But what? I replied anxiously.
we're dropping you from the record label. Your contract is not going to be renewed. The media somehow got hold of your story, and it's causing a storm that the record label is not willing or ready to handle. I'm sorry, kiddo.
He turned around and began walking towards the door. But just as he opened the door and was about to walk out, he asked me if I would really like to know who informed him that I was not the real Josiah. I nodded my head in the affirmation, and he told me that it was all Josiah. He had even bragged about it to Mr. Camp. This made me feel extremely sad, and as soon as I recovered, I immediately went up to Josiah's secret location to confront him. Unknown to him, I had my phone in my breast pocket, and he was being recorded and broadcast live. It was there that he revealed to me that he knew Dr. Kim a long time ago, and he purposely referred him to me, hoping that I would die after a few months. But after I didn't, and even had corrective surgery, his jealousy grew more and more.
I was the one that leaked your story to the press. It was me all along. It felt so good to watch you struggle.
His words hurt me like a sword to the heart. I had known him all these years, and he still wanted to keep me under him. I cried silently as I left his house after the confrontation, and as expected, my live video garnered a lot of attention, and the public saw the kind of person Josiah was and began to turn against him. I decided to make my own path and forge my own career as an artist with my own name and identity. After a while, I got signed to a record label that believed in me, and right now, I'm doing extremely well. The last time I heard of Josiah, his record label had dropped him. His own fans had turned against him, and he had seemingly vanished from social media and the public eye. He had now become an outcast.